If you're new to this session, my name is Patricia Roy-Trujillo. I'm Ojibwe and Meskwaki from Minnesota, Cass Lake, Minnesota, and Tama, Iowa. And I've been a professional picture framer for 20 years. These past 5 years, I've gone to IAIA, Institute of American Indian Arts, and I just graduated in May 16th, with my BFA in Museum Studies. I was asked to do a couple. Well, last year I did one session on mounting, matting, and framing works on paper. And this year I thought that in order to keep it kind of fresh and give people a few more skill sets, that we would go ahead and do textiles, incorporate textiles and small object mounts. And these techniques can be adapted for larger items, like, for instance, one time I did construction tools. Someone wanted a shadow box with full-size construction tools, hammers, saws, yardsticks, canvas tool bag, and it ended up being, well, almost the size of this screen. And they wanted all the real items in there. So I used these same basic techniques, and instead of using thread or cord, I used wire for most of the heavy items, depending on what the item was. If it were a silver saw, I used a silver wire. If it were the canvas bag, I used a tan wire, coated wire to adhere, to go around the loops of the leather. What else? For the wood, even just as small as a pencil was included in this shadow box. And the shadow box ended up being about this deep here. I stacked up frame walls, and created this deep shadow box. It was like a bin. Ended up looking like a big sandbox. But everything went in there, and all I did was made sure that, they came and they hung it up. I wasn't going to be responsible for hanging it up, and we agreed on that from the start. But yeah, these are the basic techniques that I use to create something like that. And they can be adapted to just about anything that you do. In the packets in front of you, you can observe that you've got a fan, which is our 3D object, and you've got, in another package, you have the fabric for the lacing, the batik. Learn the basic lacing techniques that I would use on needle points. And then you have the rug. That technique I used on that is called a couching technique. Let me run through the PowerPoint, and you can observe exactly how I did each step. And for these techniques right now, you need strong, stable, non-fragile textiles. If you have something that's fragile, say an old needlepoint or an old dress or regalia, you'll want to have that taken to a conservator first to see how stable the condition, how strong it is. Can it withstand being held? Can it withstand being upright and horizontal? Or does it need to be laying flat on a slant board? Rugs, blankets, clothing, jewelry, beadwork, feathers, rattles, bags. Now all these items must be in really good, strong condition. You wouldn't attempt this using something that has, like for instance, a rug that's partially there, or a basket or anything that's so dry and brittle that any handling is going to damage it. Those all you need to call a conservator and have them come and look at it. And if you really, really need to have it mounted, they would be the ones to judge and let you know if it's stable enough, if they can create a mount, if you want to hang it. But most likely, if it's fragile, you're going to want it laying flat. You're going to put it in a vitrine. You're not going to try to mount it onto anything. But these techniques, say you're short on vitrines, you want to be able to put things up on the wall, these techniques will work fine for you. This is the framing package, and like the previous one, the only difference with this is, depending on the item, you want to give it enough space. You don't want the glass sitting right on top of it, and always use a UV glass or UV plexi or acrylic I prefer, like previously I said, I prefer museum glass. It gives you the clearest look. But if you have an object that has a lot of fine lines or real fine detail and you want to see that detail, don't use anything that's frosted or reflection control. You want just the clear UV glass or the clear acrylic. Because once the further away you get that glass from your object, it's going to get fuzzy and distorted. Now this would be for the textile. You see right there where it says textile, and just a matte window opening. See how it's lifting the glazing up a little bit? You don't want your glazing sitting right on there, because glazing is not an inert object. Glazing will melt. It's constantly in a state of melting. And over time, you'll observe if you see old glass, how it's got the waves and the orange peel skin texture to it, the bumps and the bubbles. That's because it's melting. It's not stable, so you don't want to have a textile right up against your glass, even if it's a UV glass. And this just gives you a shortcut on how to raise your mat. You have your mat opening. If you can see, you have your mat opening, and then you just put as many layers of the acid-free foam core strips to raise your mat board up as high as you need it. And that I use that technique for the 3D objects where you might have something sticking up out higher than the actual object itself. The first one is the lacing. The lacing technique, this is what I used for needle points. And some, like scarves or shawls, people just wanted to see the actual fabric. They didn't care about the edging, and they just had this much space, but they have a shawl that's this big. So I would, get their okay, and then I would lace it around a foam core board. In the lacing package, you'll see there's a cotton muslin, the foam core, and the batik. What you'll do is you'll measure your foam core or your backing, your substrate, and you'll create a bag with the muslin. You'll sew a bag like a pillowcase style and slip your foam core in there. And then you're going to wrap your batik and lace your batik over that. Because the foam core, when it's cut, it has real sharp edges. You can get a paper cut with the corner of a foam core, because I've done it. And so you want to protect your fabric as much as possible. Put the least amount of stress on those corners where the fabric is going to be wrapped around. And this technique is not, I don't pull it taut. It's not tight on there. It might look like, if you saw the sample, if you touch those threads, they're loose. They're not tight. You can't play a song on it. They're real loose threads. They're meant just to hold the flaps down so that your fabric doesn't shift. It's not meant to make it tight. And what I do is I center the foam core on the back side of my fabric, the middle picture there, and show the part of the fabric that I want to show. And then I'll fold that flap over and stick. T-pins are good because they're easy to handle. They got their own handle on them. You could use dressmaker's pins to go into the side, into the foam core side, and they just go right in, and they'll hold that in place. You don't want to put a whole lot, just enough to hold your fabric in place when you're lacing, when you're starting to lace it. And what I do is I take the corners and I just pull those corners over, not tight. Again, we're just making the flaps fold over, and just do about 3 runs, 3 back and forth, just to hold it down. And you're going to do that on both edges, so your image is going to look like that. And then you're going to start on the corner of one of the flaps. You're going to fold it over. Let me show you. These, you're going to fold it this way, and then you're going to put your thread and needle through here, come over here, out, back on the top part, not on the back. Your thread is always going to come out from the front of the fabric. So your needle's going to go in here, out the front, and come back this way. So you'll end up with something like this. When you get to the end, that first thread, you'll do what's called just a loop knot. I don't make knots in there because I want, if somewhere down the line it needs to be taken apart again, then there doesn't have to be any cutting. All you have to do is undo that little slip knot. So I'm not actually making a knot, I'm just basically looping it. And then I go back and I'm going to pull. So you can see it's not actually knotted, it's just looped through about 3 times at the end. I'll show you when we get started. It's kind of hard to see in the picture. And then I'm going to start where I ended my thread and pull my threads just enough to bring those flaps down. Not so I'm pulling the fabric tight, just enough. And then I go back to the beginning and then I create another slip knot. See, I'm working my way back this way. And I always like to do the long way first, up and down the long way. And then I do my short side. The second technique is called couching. Again, you need something that's stable, that you know it's in good condition, good strong condition. You don't want to do this with something like a fine silk, although you could, as long as it has a seam around it, it's sewn around the edging. If it's got a seam on it, then you probably could use this technique, which I have before with a scarf. And you want to go in between the weft and the warp. You don't want to go right through the yarn. You want to find that in between. After you've centered it where you need it on your mat board, you'll measure, you know, if you got maybe an inch here, just like measuring for the mat openings. You want to get that centered. And you put your T-pins through the front. Now you're working from the front of the mat this time, not the back side. You've got your rug on the front, and you put your T-pin in there, spacing, depending on the size and the weight of the fabric. This is pretty small, so I think I only did like about maybe 3 on each side. If you've got that piece, you can see where the holes are. And put your T-pins in. You're going to do the T-pinning all the way around first. And then, once you have all your pins in there, you've got you get long enough thread. Even if you have a huge piece, you can kind of pause and put another, if your thread runs out, you can tie another piece of thread onto there. Go ahead and from the back side, you're going to bring your needle up through that opening that you made with your T-pin because it's in between the weft and the warp. And you're going to loop around your weft. If you go around the warp thread, it might be a little bit weaker because that's the decorative yarn that you don't want to go through that or over that. You want to go loop over the weft, the strong base, what's underneath. And I did this with black thread so you can kind of see on the end there how it goes over. It doesn't go through, it goes over. And you're going to match using a cotton thread. You're going to match the color as closely as possible. Or you could use the monofilament if you can't find a thread that's a close enough match, or you have multiple color fabric or rug. You can use the monofilament too, but use the thicker one. Don't use the thin one because it tends to cut and crease. It's a little harsher on your fabric. And so your backside's going to look like that, just the outline of where you had your pinholes. And if you have a huge piece like a heavy rug or something, you have, oh, we forgot to bring the strainer frame. Yeah. You can use a lightweight screening material and stretcher bars and create your own strainer frame, and that will go behind the rug. And if it needs support in the middle, see where the llama is? If it needs support in the middle, you can do stitches through that strainer frame, and it has that extra support in the middle so it doesn't over time start bagging in the front, and you'll get the sag. And the same techniques can be used for object mounting. On this fan, I chose this fan because it's got lots of holes, it's easy, it's going to be easy for you guys to put the pins through, and they were pretty reasonable. So really the same technique as the couching. You center it on the front of your mat board where you want it, and then you use the T-pins and pin in where you're going to put your stitches. And again, on something like this, I would probably use the monofilament because it's going to blend into whatever color that is. And this has a brass holder to hold the whole piece together. Try to find something that's real strong like that you can use as kind of almost a hook to help stabilize the piece. And this had a little brass loop at the back, at the base of the fan, to hold it all together. And so I went ahead and did a stitch through that too, just to kind of stabilize it. Because it was holding in place just with those stitches out on the outer edge of the fan, but I want to make sure there's no movement. Say if it were being packed and it fell forward, you don't want that to flop down. So you want it to completely stay on the mat board. And here's kind of a breakdown of the prices for all the materials that I used in the framing, and then websites where you can get the supplies. And then the end is just a little bit of my experience in picture framing. And again, this is going to be on the website, so you can go through it again at each step and see how to do it. Okay, who's doing the lacing? You want to go through? Let me put the lacing picture up there again. Okay, there you go. Grab a thread and a package, and your sewing needle is in there, and then the straight pins and the T-pins. Okay. Okay, everything's in there. And you can take the whole lid off. You don't. Yeah. Along each side is where you're going to put your pins into the side of the foam core if you're doing the lacing. What's over there? Yeah, because we don't need that much thread for this part. There you go. Yeah. Single thread, don't double it. Everybody doing okay? Busy sewing? Oh, I'm so proud. Okay, like that. And then you're going to go back again and then do the same on the other corner.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll start the lacing part.
Just get a length and go at it.
And
There's no knots at all.
nope, no knots. Just at the very, very end on the last one. There you go. And then do the same over here. Couple pins.
So you want to use as less thread as you can.
Oh no, you can use all kinds of thread if you want to, because it's all going to be in the back. Nobody's going to see it. Yeah, there you go. You got it. Now you're ready to start the lacing back and forth. Okay. But your backside is not going to matter how the flaps look in the back, as long as they're just laying down. Okay. The main purpose of the lacing is not to make it tight or to make it look any kind of way on the back. You just want to hold those flaps down.
Is it one continuous thread?
One this way and one this way. One whole thread.
So
Oh, wow, you did good. That's much better than the first one. Yeah, awesome. There you go. All right.
awesome.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Well done, you.
Awesome. All right. Okay, anybody doing the fans?
Yes,
You're doing the
I
fan.
am
Did you
right
pin yours already?
Yes.
Okay. Yep, she's well on her way. All right. There you go. You might have to lift it just a little bit. So I can just punch it right through and I have a little bit of, yeah, there you go. You got it. And then I just take the foam core off when I'm getting ready to sew.
I see. So
I would do about maybe three in here,
Okay.
yeah.
That's yours.
See? All right, that's good. You want to leave some of this?
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Patricia, are you an expert needle threader?
I used to be, now I gotta get all, I gotta work myself up to it.
This is a pretty thick thread.
It is. It's, this is the button and carpet thread that we're using, because it's heavy duty.
Is this a good size?
Oh, you are so much better at that.
Yeah. And don't double your thread, just a single thread.
Or can you? Forgot to put my hole in my little.
Yeah, that one I just poked through. I couldn't leave the pin in there. I just made the hole and then I just sewed it down. Yeah, I had the same issue. But
It's so
if,
much easier with foam board.
yeah, but then you
There
don't
we
want
go.
foam board showing in your
Yeah.
display.
There we go. I got it.
You got it. All right. Okay, and you got in between the threads. Yeah. Let's open that up. T-pins. They're stronger, they're a little bit thicker, and they got like a little handle on there, so they're a lot easier on your fingers.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you can use the dressmaker pins, but these T-pins are a lot easier because see, you can put pressure on that.
Oh, yeah.
See?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you want to do it in a few areas.
Yeah.
So, and you want to go in between. You don't want to go right through the yarn. You want to go in between. So you're doing as little damage or invasion
Oh, I see.
as possible.
Yeah.
Like that. And you want to go straight through. You don't want to go at an angle because then you're cutting the fibers of your rug.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So in between, let me find a good spot where you can see in between right here. Like that. See? Okay, go ahead and do that. Here's some more pins in here. Use the T-pins. And then once you have it all pinned around, then you start coming. You use those same holes that you pinned. You'll pull that pin out and you're going to put your needle through the back, out the front, and then you're going to loop over one of these weft threads, or warp
Okay.
threads.
Loop over.
Over. Don't go through it, but you just want to loop as little as possible. See? And then you're going to go back through the same hole.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Once you loop over the top of your rug or fabric, you're going to loop it and go back, sink your needle back into the same hole. See, this is how it's going to look on the back side. See how this thread, it came out.
Oh,
You sink it
I
in, and
see.
then you're going to come back out through the same opening and go on to the next one. In, loop it, and out again.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So you on each corner. Loop
Yeah,
it.
yeah, depending on the size of the fabric, you'll do on the corner, and then you'll do however many. If this were, say, a 5 foot by 5 foot piece, you're going to do multiple holes across, and then you probably do some in here too.
Okay, so I need a pin in the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
In the middle, and then come from. No, go this way.
From the back.
Oh, come from the back.
Mm-hmm.
And go up.
Mm-hmm.
So loop it here.
You're going to loop it, not on the pin, you're going to loop it over
Oh,
a
in
thread, over one of these fibers.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And then go over to here
Yeah, on the back side.
from the back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead and do your first one. I want to watch you.
Take the pin out.
Mm-hmm. Make sure and hold your fabric where it needs to be. And again, you'll be doing these with gloves on
Yeah.
to make it even more fun. But what you do in your own department, It's up to you. But just remember, any oils on your hands, they're going to transfer onto the fabric, the paper, whatever you touch. And you might not see it now, but you'll see it eventually. It's going to pop up over time.
So what do you do at the end?
You can pull it out.
Oh, I can pull it out? I was
Just pull it
going
out.
to actually, do a few
Oh, sure.
loops to kind of pull that
Uh-huh.
a little bit snug and then
Yeah.
finish my knot.
Yeah.
So,
You don't want to pull it too tight because then you're putting
right.
tension on that fiber up in the front.
Sure. Well, so I get a C plus maybe. For this one instead of an A. But I mean, just doing
Yep,
that
uh-huh.
is enough to bring
pick
it
up
through
that
it.
slack, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now just the slip knot.
Mm-hmm, just tie it off,
Or
regular
I
knot.
should go back in maybe, huh? I just didn't.
No, you don't have
I
to.
don't have to. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Well, then I'll try it that way, and then I'll try to remember in the future to be more.
Again, takes a little practice,
Sure does.
but you get it.
So when you use the term glazing, you're referring to the
The
either
glass.
the glass or the acrylic.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
How you
are
doing?
textiles typically framed without glass, or is it depend on?
It depends on where it's going to be hanging. If you know it's going to be okay without it, and if you have a climate controlled environment, then it's probably going to be safe out there.
Yeah.
Not in the right kind of lighting. You don't want harsh lighting because it's going to. What the glazing does is it protects it from all these outside elements.
Yeah.
And then again, it depends on how long it's going to be hanging or on display.
Yeah. 'cause
Yeah,
I guess
fabrics, textiles, you don't want to have them on display for too long. I say maximum 6 months, because as long as they're out there and they're submitted to all this lighting and pollution,
Would it be the same with baskets?
yeah, I wouldn't have baskets out for more than 6 months, just because it's really hard on the objects when they're subjected to this bright light, and in the storage, they're in the darker, they're in an environment controlled temperature. You don't have those fluctuations. Some people opening doors. So yeah,
Like the Japanese, they change their prints, and those prints are hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they look just beautiful.
because they don't leave them up all the time. Yeah,
So if you do glaze, should the glass not touch the
not touch the fabric.
fabric? So
Yeah.
you need some kind of mat or something.
And the reason for that is because, like I said, glass is in a constant state of, it's a liquid.
Yeah.
It's not an inert
Yeah,
object.
it's hard to think of it as a liquid.
I know, right? Well, it breaks. But yeah,
liquid thing.
yeah, you don't want to put that on your fabric, even though it's a UV glass because it's coated. The reason why it's a UV glass is because they have a coating on it. That's what makes it UV. So you don't want your glass sitting on there. And the further away you have your glass from your textile, the better off it's going to be. That's why I like to raise my glass up off it a lot. Yeah. But having it in an enclosed framing package, it gives it all the protection you possibly could give it.
So to make a package for that, so you would put your mat in.
You got your object,
Yeah.
you got your backing, you've got your spacers or your mat board that's going to go over it to protect it, your glazing, and that whole package, once it's completely cleaned out, you've got it all clean and spiffy, nothing's in there,
Yeah.
then you're going to tape that up all around the edge. You're going to enclose it. So it's got its own micro chamber in there.
Yeah.
So the foam core on the back, the acid-free foam core, it's filtering out all these pollutants and everything that's in the air. So, and then you have that barrier of that paper. The chambers are on the inside. That's what you're poking your pin into. Yeah. So that filters out all of those pollutants. And so what you have here touching the fabric, is going to be that cotton muslin, the acid-free, whatever foam core or matting that you have on top. So the main aim is to keep it protected while it's on display.
But
You use the foam core, the acid-free foam core, and you cut strips. For something like this, I would cut probably about maybe a 3/4 inch strip, and you use double stick tape to put that strip on there, acid-free double stick tape,
okay,
and just build up as many layers as you need to raise your mat up
okay.
above
So
the artwork.
okay, so
Yeah.
the backing board of this may come out here,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'll just keep layering up pieces on
This,
top
the
of
foam
that
core strips, yeah.
until I get a thickness
The height that
that's-
you want.
so that the mat's
Make sure it's not too thick for your frame, though. Yeah. So really, it depends on the frame, the size you're gonna end up with.
Yeah.
If you want to have, you know, a real dramatic, and this is what I recommend when I do my framing design. If you want a real dramatic statement, you're gonna focus, this is the main piece in your collection. You wanna have a stunning, I think, but not overpowering matting. So usually a neutral color, and you want a real wide one. So you're gonna end up, you have this, say 8 by 10, and you want about 3 inches of matting. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna add 6 inches to the 8, 6 inches to the 10, and you're gonna end up with what?
Another
Yeah. But you always gotta make sure, don't forget, you've got 2 sides here.
Yeah.
Don't just add 3 inches and think you're gonna have a 3-inch mat all the way around, because you gotta double everything. And I like to write everything out. I'll draw it out, including my measurements. Yeah, because I need to see it.
Yeah.
It's easier to see it, and even when you cut your mat opening, try it on there. Put the frame around the edge, try it on there, see how it looks. Because you don't want to get it all the way in the frame and say, oh, well, I didn't mean to make it that size, I meant to make it this wide, and then you got to start all the way over again. So, always double measure. Draw a picture.
Measure twice.
Exactly. All right, well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. This has been a blast. It's been really fun. I love doing this. I did a lot of training for all of our stores in the Rocky Mountain region for Michaels and Aaron Brothers for many years. I trained not only the newcomers to the store, but I also trained the district managers in framing techniques. So I do it as a crash course, and one day they get really all the basic skills they need to be able to take an order, cut a simple mat, do a simple mount, and put it in the frame ready to go to the customer and go home. So you got a real condensed version of this.
Thank you, Pat.
Welcome. Thank you. You're all welcome.